thank you guys for coming this morning. We're going to walk through a public art project that's called Mapping Resistance, the Young Lords en el Barrio.
By enlarging these historic photographs, I wanted to make a very proud history of activism in the Puerto Rican community visible in these places where the photographs were taken 50 years ago.
Young Lords, we're a social justice organization of young, mostly Puerto Rican activists, founded in 1968 in Chicago. It was directly inspired and influenced by the Black Panther Party. 1969, 1 year later, a group of Puerto Rican activists formed a New York chapter. Hiram Maristany was the official photographer of the Young Lords. He was one of the original members of the Young Lords. And what's unique about his lens is that Hiram is shooting it always from within the organization.
In East Harlem, we were under siege. The Young Lords were one of the few Latino groups that said enough. We stood up.
I think this is probably one of the most iconic photographs of the Young Lords, which is the famous Bronx March.
The Young Lords were demonstrating support for the Panther 21 who were unjustly arrested. As we marched, people were joining, and the crowd, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. When you look at the Bronx March and you see a bunch of 20-year-olds starting a march that is 15 miles away and ready to sacrifice, it reminds me that there's nothing we can't do.
Looking at where are the parallels in our history.
When Miguel came to me with the idea of mapping the resistance, I was intrigued and very, very happy to do it because this was a public project.
The images return directly to the streets and to the community that inspired their history. And for us, that was a really powerful idea.
This building
Yeah.
is that building.
That pharmacy. All of that takes place at this very intersection 50 years ago. Yeah.
The selection of images was a long process of Hiram and I sitting at this table looking for the most powerful photographs to help tell this story.
So this image here is one of my favorite images in the project. 50 years ago, tuberculosis was an epidemic in this neighborhood. There was a mobile medical truck that did testing, but it was further out in an area that had very low foot traffic. So the Young Lords devised a strategy to relocate the truck. In broad daylight, to tell the technicians we're gonna take the truck. We just want to move it back to our neighborhood where people really need it. It was an act of civil disobedience. So the TB truck arrives here, and in the first 3 days, they tested like 770 people. In the previous locations where the truck was being stationed, they would test an average of about 100 people a day. So they proved two things, right? One, that there was a huge need in East Harlem, but two, that they had the capacity to address that need if given the resources.
On the one hand, we're commemorating a group of people who fought to improve the lives of our community, but the other half is to activate the work. So the walking tours have been a really important part of that.
In the early 70s, one of the most incredible things that they do around health is they take over one of the buildings of Lincoln Hospital to start a detox program. So they introduce acupuncture as a holistic remedy and therapy to deal with addiction. So to commemorate that history, once a month we have an acupuncture healing space.
My name is Walter Bosque del Rio, and in the 1970s I was a member of the Young Lords organization. By 1972 we created the acupuncture detox unit at the Lincoln Hospital. Each municipal hospital has an acupuncture detox program, thanks to our efforts back in the 70s. If you look at the Young Lords platform, those issues, the health, education, community activism, they're still viable because the core issues are still there. There's still poverty, hunger, and racism.
This project starts in 2017 during the 100-year anniversary of U.S. citizenship for Puerto Ricans. 2017 is also the year that Hurricane Maria hits Puerto Rico. It's a year of lots of histories colliding and converging. I was thinking about Puerto Rico's relationship to the United States and my relationship to both places as someone who has grown up in between those two places. Activists on the island were applying these very creative solutions to crisis issues in the face of government failure. And a lot of that history was echoing the history of the Young Lords. If we know our history is powerful, and if we teach our history forward, it can really empower us to not just be proud of who we are, but also to know what we can do and accomplish.
And in this particular photo you can see the young people also coming out to support. The average age of the Young Lords was 17 years old, which is amazing.
That's the inspiring history of the Young Lords, is how young they were, and how well organized they were, and how they led actions that led to direct social change. That's a powerful story, and we need to know that story.
This happened in this community. Puerto Ricans created that history. And we want to make sure that people don't forget it, because as gentrification comes to this community, there's a tendency for our history to dissipate and to become absorbed into some other history. We must take ownership of our own history.
While we're doing this project and activating these conversations in the street, it was so powerful to see what was happening in Puerto Rico. A movement driven by young people, artists, activists, educators, families, people crossing political lines to join, in unison. And it led to an incredible change, right? We were able to force the resignation of a corrupt leader. When we see this history today in conversation with protests happening on the island in real time, that's what is powerful for us in this moment. One generation is being honored and celebrated for all the things they did to make lives better for us. And this new generation of young people, both here and in Puerto Rico, are leading something that is hopeful and rethinking and reimagining the kind of future that we can have. And that's an exciting idea, because anything's possible if we're in control of our own destiny.
Thank you. Same thing we going through in Philly.
Exactly. Y'all from Philly? Yeah. Used to be a Young Lords chapter in Philly also. Yeah.